like a swarm of mosquitoes. You can kill a lot of them, you can kill them easily, but if there are enough mosquitoes, one's going to bite you.
So that was an excellent TV show called Dogfights, and I went back to the kamikazes only to emphasize that a lot of these ideas aren't new. You might call that a swarm. They certainly considered themselves to be expendable, and they were difficult to counter. They had to use their guns on board the ship, but ultimately they had to use manned aircraft to engage them for it to be really effective. Our ongoing and most recent work, this was just last month, we went and visited our friends at the Naval Postgraduate School out at Camp Roberts. They had their aircraft there. We carried our software with us, put it on their aircraft. So we had two very distinct algorithm stacks of software. They launched and flew theirs. We launched and flew ours, and so we each launched 10. We ended up with 8 on 10. And what we're told is the first ever UAV swarm dogfight. Now we had to simulate some of the capabilities. The vehicles shared their positions with each other, so in a real dogfight that wouldn't happen. So obviously in the future some sensing capability needs to be incorporated so that the vehicles can detect and track adversaries. And the other part that was simulated is the cannon. So the vehicles would issue a firing message, and then there was an arbiter that would declare whether a vehicle had been hit or not. Obviously in the future there will be, or would necessarily have to be, real cannon on the vehicles, but this is a step we think in the right direction. We think that it's important to consider. In the context of these swarms, if you've got one, then what would you do if such a swarm was in the hands of your adversary? And so to that end, we are investigating in simulation how we can field rapid numbers of vehicles, red versus blue, explore tactics. We're starting to incorporate machine learning to see what the machine learning algorithms will come up with in terms of which tactics can beat and defeat other tactics. And then we can, with our architecture, pick that up and put it on a real aircraft and go fly like we did last month. Sorry for rushing this. These are what I see as the open research challenges. This is what I see as needing to be solved and to making these systems truly effective. Sensing and perception, I touched on that, but the vehicles need to be able to detect each other, track each other. We're starting to do some of that in our ongoing research, but that needs a lot of attention. Navigation, we talked about swarms not having to rely on GPS. They need to have ways that they can navigate without GPS, perhaps using onboard computer vision or other sensors. Communications architectures are very important. How do they communicate with each other and back to commanders? Autonomous behaviors, I talked a little bit about this, how we're developing tactics and behaviors using machine learning to create even more novel tactics. There's another DARPA program out. There's an announcement out now called DARPA Offset, which is hoping to address some of this for how can you crowdsource, or at least government crowdsource tactics, analyze them very quickly, and then deploy them very quickly in a reference architecture. Human factors I didn't spend a lot of time on, but it's hugely important. When we flew our swarm of 30, we designed an operator interface that would allow one operator to monitor the execution of those 30 aircraft, but there was still a big cognitive load on that operator, and so we're considering how in the future we can simplify this interface. I talked about the sheepdog and how we could nudge the system in a particular way without having to give very detailed commands. Trust is huge. You hear a lot about that these days. Humans have to trust the system. The system needs to be able to act in ways that would elicit trust from the human, slowly build that trust. But also, part of this is behavior recognition, behavior intent. So you hear about well-oiled teams that don't have to communicate that much because they work with each other, they observe each other, they take perceptual cues from their teammates. Robots will need to have those capabilities. We also believe that they'll need to be able to come together and dynamically form teams. You can think of a NATO environment where perhaps French UAVs need to not only interoperate with ours, but they need to be able to dynamically form these teams and discover each other's capabilities and monitor each other during execution. And of course, I touched on this, but heterogeneous teams are going to be key. How can the vehicles task each other appropriately when they have different sensors? So with that, I want to thank you all for your time today. I've enjoyed speaking with you. Yes. Two questions.
So on that question of communications, a different take is, with the swarms, are you also researching how you provide ubiquitous comms?